Hum inside my heart a little while. Come closer with the honey of your song. Your dance is a code, is a pathway to what's given. I am learning how to listen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. I have a very special guest. I am so excited to share her with you, my sister, Melissa Coton. I first met Melissa years ago on the beaches of Costa Rica, and our paths have been continuously weaving back and forth, and she has become a great ally on my path. So I'm very honored to have her here in this space, sharing her wisdom with all of you. Melissa offers yoga and meditation alongside spiritual teachings from different parts of the world, which have impacted her relationships, her sense of self, and her perception of life in such a way that she feels passionate about sharing these practices and teachings with others. Melissa is grateful and honored to have the opportunity to co create spaces where everyone can feel safe and where we can explore big questions like what is life, what is death, and what are we? Without looking for answers but simply resting together in the silence these questions evoke. On a practical level, Melissa is also very interested in how our spiritual endeavors can enable us to contribute to a more peaceful world. She has found sharing simple practices and healing modalities to contribute to this. So, before we begin, may we all take some time to ground into this space and into ourselves. Let's begin by taking a deep inhale through the nose. And exhale out the mouth. Thank you all so much. Let's begin.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for joining me in this space. It feels so good to have you here in this digital realm with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here with you.
Oh, it's such an honor to have you here. Our paths have woven many times throughout the last decade in very unique ways, and so I'm really excited to have you here and to dig a little deeper into your story and your process and your journey.
Yes, thank you. I've also loved witnessing your journey and noticing how we found our ways back together in the most surprising ways, but also I think when we met, there was an inner knowing that something like this might happen sometime, and here we are.
Yes, here we are. Okay, so I'd love to start this out with hearing more about you, about your journey, and how did you come to be in this space where you are now?
Great. First of all, I want to say again, thank you so much for doing these podcasts. Thank you for creating this space for others to share their journey. I have found myself many times on my journey looking at other people and the choices, the life choices they have made and feeling inspired. And so I hope that some of the things that perhaps some of my family members may have thought were completely maybe crazy or irresponsible can be of inspiration to anyone listening and wondering whether life can be lived in a different way. And of course, we all have our own unique path, but I think we're also here to support one another and to inspire each other. So I think I'll begin with where my yoga journey began. I was very much a very active person, constantly seeking something, not knowing what that was. And I looked, in material possessions, at work, in relationships. And it was like this feeling of restlessness, like I wouldn't stop until I had what I wanted. And I received the promotion I wanted, and I traveled where I wanted to travel, and still there was this longing. And it was through yoga. I remember the fateful moment in Shavasana one day that I felt a peace, a sense of oneness that I believe I had felt before. Perhaps, as a child, I think we're naturally in awe and connected to life, and we always are. We never cease to be, but sometimes our minds become an obstacle in perceiving that oneness, which is always here, right? It's nowhere else but here. But it was in that moment, in the final relaxation in a class, that I felt a sense of oneness. And it was almost like a feeling of relief, of like, oh, this thing that I have been looking for is not a thing, and no thing can ever give me that feeling. No experience, actually, because it wasn't so much the experience of yoga, but rather the realization that came through it of slowing down and becoming mindful, aware. And so that was perhaps about 15 years ago. I'm counting roughly. And then some time passed, and then I realized that I had to leave the life that was so comfortable in many ways, having a stable job with a social security and a retirement plan and all these things, and a savings account, and all these things that growing up I had aspired to have. Because we don't really own anything in this life. We look after it, I believe. And so I decided to let go of those things slowly, but to slowly release all these things that in a way held me back and weighed me down, even though I was grateful for everything in my life then. To start traveling, backpacking with, just a backpack, teaching yoga. I lived in Panama for a few years, and now I'm living in Guatemala. And those corporate days feel like another lifetime, a lifetime that I'm very grateful for, because it brought me here. It brought me to meet you, as well as I met you on that journey when I was backpacking. So that's just a little snapshot of how I got here, but I'm sure we'll continue with the conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so beautiful to hear your inspiration, and how the roots of it is deeply grounded in the yogic path. And I feel like that's such a common thing in our modern society, where I like to call it the quantum leap, where people are living these lives that they feel they're expected to. And they're not finding the true fulfillment and realizing that we cannot fill ourselves with things. And as you said, that thing that we're looking for is not a thing. And so there's that leap from these normal, quote unquote, normal lives into the unknown. And yeah, I myself was a backpacker for a long time. That's, like you said, how we met. And it's so beautiful meeting people in the midst of that journey of discovering themselves and of finding what's hidden within. And so I'd love to hear more from you on that process of discovery and how it was that you came to find that thing that's not a thing.
Yes. Yeah, great question. Um, what I sometimes refer to as inner work, which sounds like something that is based on self-development, of improving ourselves, which, I think is also important. But inner work, more in the sense of looking within, beyond this idea of self that we have. And I would say that, that moment that I described a moment ago of that inner stillness and calm and oneness was my first introduction as an adult to it. But really, it has been for me, particularly in silent retreats, that this feeling, this knowing has become a lot more almost palpable. Although, of course, this thing that is not a thing cannot be described or touched or grasped. Yet it's this essence, right, that gives us this remembrance. Oh yeah, of course I know this. I am everything. And when we're living quote unquote no more life, because what is that, of course, but it's a lot harder, at least for me, it was a lot harder to perceive it because there was a schedule to follow, a rhythm to follow, and that included a social life and a 9 to 5 and going to the gym and this feeling of having to keep going and no time to pause and to really be in awe of our own existence. And of course, backpacking, that is a lot more available. Although I noticed very much that when I started backpacking, I kept that same rhythm and I was like doing. And at one point I was quite tired and I thought, oh, wait, I'm repeating what I was doing, my lifestyle in England and London, and doing the same while backpacking. So when I realized that, I slowed down, and this is what took me to live in Panama for a few years. Yeah, I think looking within is, for me, has been the simplest yet most powerful practice, if we can call it that, because practice sounds like there's like guidelines and you have to do it a certain way. But actually, I think there is a multitude of ways to look within. But for me, stillness and silence are really key to be able to recognize what is already here. Because, of course, it's not about discovering something new, but actually revealing what is already always here.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. It is interesting how, again, in our modern paradigm, these silent retreats are becoming so popular. And I feel like it's because we live in this hyper busy state constantly, where we're always consuming, and not just physically, but mentally as well. And how powerful those silent retreats and creating that space, literally stripping away all that we can within our realm to really go inward. And as you said, to pause and be in awe of our own existence. And that's something that I've really noticed my work has been aligned with lately, is recognizing that magic of just being alive and what we are blessed and granted with in this life. And so I know that you have attended a lot of silent retreats and possibly hosted them. I'm sorry, I don't know. But can you explain more what a silent retreat is and what did you receive from that experience?
Yes, of course. Yes. And before I begin with that, I also want to say that I don't think that silence is the only way. And I am personally not a biological mother, although I feel that I mother many children. I'm very grateful for that. Um, I can see how the motherhood path is also a path that leads to awakening. There are so many paths. So of course we can recognize the awe when looking at a newborn or your growing child or your lover or the sky or whatever it is at your own body, right? We can marvel at anything. So I totally believe that there are many paths. But for me, the path of silence is one that has really grounded that recognition of beauty, to put it simply, of beauty in everything, always in the now, as there is no other moment where we can experience oneness, which is one of the core teachings of yoga. And so for me at the beginning, silence was, I think, something that called me, drew me in and scared me. So I started with 3 days. And I think during that retreat, multiple times I thought, I'm never doing this again, which is not an uncommon story. And then on the third day, I thought, it was just 3 days, I thought, I'm going to sign up for the 10 days. And so I wanted to do the 10 days, but then due to travel plans being canceled worldwide for some time, I couldn't go. And then I went back after 2 years for the 10 days. And I remember on day 3 thinking, wow, 7 days left. And there was quite a lot of, I think, many challenges during the silence, because ultimately, when we remove distractions, we're really left with ourselves. And what we see is not always what we want to see. And for me, it was quite an awakening to see actually that there was a lot of judgment towards myself, frustration. A clear moment. I remember someone in the silent retreat, someone blowing their nose, and me having this moment of frustration of thinking, oh, will they stop already blowing their nose? And it was so interesting because I had quite a good image of myself as being a very, kind-hearted, compassionate person, which of course, I think both can be true. We can experience frustration and be kind. But in that moment, it was uncomfortable. And I thought, oh, what is this part of me that is frustrated that someone can't breathe, when you look really at the situation? And so this is just one insight of the many insights that have been revealing over time. And ultimately, what the silence reveals to us is who we truly are beyond the personality, beyond the thoughts, beyond everything that we think ourselves to be. So during the 10 days, I had that and many more insights. And then I did a 17-day silent retreat. And in that one, I would say a lot more ease came through, a lot more grace. So my body, which felt so uncomfortable, the first 10-day retreat I did, and the 17 days, I was like, oh, okay, this body can relax, because often the mental tension translates into physical tension. And now, as I may have mentioned to you, I'm not sure, I've signed up for 49 days. So in just a couple of weeks, I'll be starting my longest time in silence yet. And I'm feeling very grateful. Of course, there is also some sweaty hands. I wouldn't say fear, because there's also a knowing when you have a positive feedback loop with a practice. It's almost like, okay, well, every time I've gone into silence, I've come away feeling more at peace, loving and compassionate. So of course, this is the path for me in this lifetime. But 49 days is a long amount of time. So I'm enjoying every moment. I think the medicine of the retreat has already started, because I look at my partner, and he's always pretty much the same, but I look at him and I'm like, so yeah, that's part of the medicine. I think the appreciation for and the awe for life as it is already. And just to answer your question, yes, I've guided a 48-hour silent retreat a few years ago. And I just announced actually today, if I may share, that I'll be guiding a 3-day silent retreat towards the end of May in Panama. So I'm very excited for the opportunity to share this medicine with others.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. It's so potent to hear you refer to silent retreats as medicine, because I feel like, especially as we both work in the same conscious business industry, if we can call it that, there is a lot of, I like to call it pseudo spirituality, where people think of medicine specifically just as plant medicine. And I think that there can be a potency and a time and place for that. But we already have so much available to us in every single moment. And one is meditation, right? And silent meditation is one of those methods. As you said, there's so many other methods that are available to us all the time. And we don't need to go spending thousands of dollars on plant medicine when we have so much available to us, and finding empowerment in that. So thank you for sharing your experience, and for sharing that you are also offering this beautiful medicine that really inspires me and lights up my heart to hear that you're offering that. So thank you. And I'd love to hear more about meditation from you. I know that there are other styles that really call to you and other ways that you practice. So would you be open to sharing more about those?
Yeah, of course. Yes. Thank you for mentioning also plant medicine. I have personally sat with different medicines from different parts of the world, and I'm very grateful for every experience. But something that was revealed to me in one of the silent retreats during meditation is that which was revealed to me in a ceremony was also available without plant medicine. So when I speak of the silent retreats, thank you for asking the question, but most of the time we spend in the silent retreats is meditating. In the retreats I offer, I'm offering, 3 hours of meditation with an optional extra time for those who feel called to. However, for example, for this 49-day silent retreat, the recommendation is to do 8 hours. Not do rather, but to practice 8 hours. And just as you were saying in the, when we started talking about silence, this is something that is such good medicine, actually, because of the lifestyles that we lead, because we live in such a fast-paced world. And so for many of us, I am yet to meet anyone who says otherwise. The first time we sit with ourselves, still with eyes closed, the first thing we want to do is run. There is a lot of restlessness, agitation. The mind is, a storm. The body is uncomfortable. And so, of course, we don't do this just to experience dukkha, right? As the Buddha put it, life is dukkha. There is a lot of suffering in life. And we don't bring ourselves to our meditation cushion just so that for the purpose of ongoing suffering, that would be terrible. But often, and for myself, this was the case at the beginning, there is hardship because, like I was saying, my insights about myself, my little self, the perceived identity, all that really comes to the surface. And so the practice of meditation is a practice of coming to know the true self, but first we need to come to meet the Nisargadatta Maharaj. Instead of saying the higher self, because he says that implies there's a lower self, he says the outer self and the inner self. And of course, the two are one. When we speak of the egoic mind, we don't need to make an enemy of it, but rather recognize that it is almost like a shadow of the soul, but not separate. So rather than rejecting it, embracing it and recognizing the gifts that it brings and also the parts that need perhaps some extra love. So for me, it's been really a journey of deepening my relationship to myself. And also I'll use this word with a warning message first. I had a real hard time with this word for a long time, the word God. I had some not so good experiences at some point in my life with different religions. And so I had grown a bit aversive to that term God. Now I see it as the great mystery of life, the essence of existence, or some may call it universe or divine mother, whatever resonates. But really this practice of meditation, I feel brings me closer to that truth, that I am that we are all that. And so therefore, if I meet someone that I don't agree with, I feel that my personal practice every morning when I sit to practice, I'm recognizing that divinity within myself, which makes me better equipped to recognize the divinity in everyone. Have I fully mastered that? Absolutely not. Do I try my best? Of course, yes. And this is what the spiritual path is about, really, not perfection, but aspiring to be the best version of ourselves, to be loving, to be accepting and compassionate. And it's a journey.
What a beautiful journey it is, eh? Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Something that you just brought up that I'd love to hear more about is this idea of a committed practice and a continual practice. And in Sanskrit, there's the word abhyasa, right? That committed continual practice over a long period of time. And I know that I've recognized or witnessed through my offerings and through the students that I get to teach to and learn with, is that there's always this talk of but it's so hard to stay committed. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on Abhyasa and how you have been able to stay committed to a practice and how you offer that to your students as well.
Yeah, such a great question. Thank you, Danya. Um, I think we often learn through experience. So before I was able to have a daily spiritual practice, I fell off the wagon multiple times. So I would go through kind of like stints, of I would discover a new yoga studio and find like a 30-day challenge, and then I would have a regular practice. And then as soon as that was finished, I could go 3 months without it. I think for me, daily practice became something, I want to say, permanent. So something that stayed in my life during and after yoga teacher training. Because before that, I think I had this feeling that it was beneficial, but I was still limited in my amounts of inspiration to practice. And for me, the biggest inspiration is this intention of, may this practice be for the highest benefit of all beings. And so even if the little me, doesn't want to practice, and it is hard to commit to something, especially when we have so many distractions available, when there is so much given to us freely, right? If you just look at your phone, you could be distracted for a whole day, which is the opposite of meditation. So of course, the mind wants things to distract itself, and the soul has this intuition that actually lessening the distractions could have a positive effect. And of course it does. But before we reap the benefits of the practice, often quite some personal effort is needed. And in this personal effort, there doesn't need to be force, which I think at one point I was a bit confused about that. So no self-violence, right, through this, but some structure, some really like this spiritual commitment of, I will sit here every day for the highest benefit of all. So this is something that I repeat to the yogis who come to our trainings, or right now I'm actually getting an online meditation program, and having a group. So the Sangha, right? The Buddha taught that there were three main elements to the spiritual path, and one of them was the Sangha, which is the spiritual community or the spiritual family. And I think surrounding ourselves with people who are also inspired by this path, by this journey, can really be uplifting. This is not to say, of course, that we are secluded with our communities. Of course, this is for the purpose of being able to be of service to all wherever we are needed. But having people we can speak about this, like you and I right now, that we can encourage and inspire each other. And then once we start feeling the benefits of the practice, the relationships with the people we love become more easeful, or life simply becomes more joyful, then it's almost like, I don't want to miss my practice. I really don't want to. These days, I almost skip into my meditation room. But it hasn't always been this way, of course. And so I think remembering why we're doing it for me is really something that helps to stay inspired and committing. So saying, okay, for 21 days or for 40 days, I will do this. And if we can do it with a group of people, I think that can really help.
Wow, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing up the importance of having a community around you to support you. I think that that's something I've really noticed with a lot of students who come to the trainings that I offer, is that a lot of them feel quite alone, right? And they come to these trainings in search of finding that community, or that sangha, as you said, the spiritual community that inspires them to evolve and to grow and to stay committed to their practice. And I agree with you that that's such an important piece to the path. So thank you for bringing that forth. Um, there's a there's something that you have talked about a few times that you've noted now throughout this conversation, and I would love to dig a little bit deeper into your depth of wisdom here and see what comes forth. Throughout our conversation, you've brought up this idea of the true self. And I would love to hear your perspective or your wisdom on what the true self is.
Yeah, beautiful. I think the first thing to be noted is that, of course, we can use many words, but words are limiting, of course, when it comes to this ineffable. And I love in the Sufi tradition, there are 99 names for God, and some of these are like the loving one, or the generous one, or the creator. So all these terms that refer to the qualities of this self with a capital S. Something that was revealed to me actually at a silent retreat after much battling with myself, to be totally honest, seeing myself think and being resentful of my thoughts, and getting to the point where I was a bit tired of being, in my mind and cycling over, the same thoughts. And at some point it was in an evening session and I was tired and a bit fed up, and this tiredness was actually really helpful. And in that moment, I think often we expect the revelation of the self to be something, where there are like bells ringing and angels and maybe this celestial music. And of course it can be that, but it can also be there can be such a simplicity to this recognition of the self. And for me, it was simply love. There were no words, there was nothing else, but just this feeling of love, not for someone, not directed at someone or not attached to an experience or a place, but just this feeling of love and when we attach the word unconditional love, well, that is the very nature of love, is that it is very simply. And although now I don't feel called so much to work with plant teachers as I did once in my life, and it definitely served me. But in some of these ceremonies, what would be revealed would always be love. And I find this so beautiful, how whether you're working with a plant medicine from the Amazon, or learning from gurus, in different parts of the world, what different scriptures say, but all point to the very essence of our being, of what we may call God, as being love. And I think at first I had a little resistance to this, like, because I hadn't experienced it, or I didn't know I had. And so I was like, all is love. I mean, sure, but this is not what I see when I look around me. But now through personal experience, this self, I can say, is pure love. And from it, of course, everything is birthed. And anything that isn't love, I would say, is simply a distortion in reality, in Lila, right? Or in Maya, the illusion that we live in. And so this practice of the revelation of the self, I think, is not so much about creating something, but about removing the layers, the many layers that we put on as we grow and we try to survive in this world. So yeah, to put it so simply, love. That's what the self is, I believe, and I feel in my soul, rather.
Thank you so much for that. And I love how you shared that this path has been removing the layers to remember that love that you already carry and that you already are. And that's really beautiful and potent. And yeah, throughout my own journey with plant medicine and through studying ancient scriptures, that is the one theme that keeps coming through, is love. And it doesn't matter which lineage you look at, even like Jesus Christ, Christianity is, well, this is a whole nother topic we could get into, but Christianity has taken on a certain form in our modern society. But Jesus Christ himself, all he preached was love one another, right? That was one of his largest quotes: turn the other cheek, love one another. And the original Buddha, same thing. And we can look at all these potent teachers as these catalysts to remind us how to love. And so thank you for bringing that that forth and for sharing your insight into that. And so I'd love, it's going to be the ongoing pun for this conversation now. I'd love to hear more from you on what practices, we've talked a little bit about meditation, we've talked a little bit about yoga and now plant medicine, but what practices or what methods have you brought into your life that have really grounded that essence of love in yourself and in your offerings?
Yes, thank you for another beautiful question. So certainly I feel like meditation is my anchor, is the core practice, let's say, what I begin my everyday with. But in recent years, I started to discover sound healing, and it fascinated me. I've always loved music. I've always loved, my dad used to play the saxophone to my mom when she was pregnant with me. So I think music has been part of my awareness since I began existing in this body, at least. And of course, music is everywhere. But I've been really fascinated actually by the scientific aspect of this. Some say that music or sound is the medicine of the future. When we consider the fact that we are energy, not as like a woo-woo kind of saying, but physically speaking, quantum physics now speaks of all of this, of the fact that we are energy, that we are vibration. And so observing how the vibration of a high frequency instrument like a Tibetan bowl or a tuning fork, and how that can affect the body, emotions, the mind, and bring the mind to calmer state, we could say, and how that enables the body to heal itself, to me is so incredibly exciting, because I adore teaching yoga, the asana, the posture aspect of it. And it does require a certain personal effort. So I found myself with my parents, for example, who are now in their 60s. And if you haven't practiced yoga your entire life, starting a new practice, I believe yoga is accessible to all, but they may not feel comfortable to a yoga class, let's say, to go and attend, And with sound, anyone can participate. So all you need to do is lay down and receive. And I was going to say, all you need is to be able to hear, but actually not even. I recently offered a sound healing, and I had a deaf woman who joined, and she shared at the end, she's able to communicate, but she can't hear. She has a machine that she uses. So she had the machine close to the instruments, and this helped, I believe, her experience. But at the end, she shared how she felt a great sense of ease in her body and different sensations. And the beauty is that at the end, in the sharing, often what people come to is, I had this great sense of love, and I had memories, and I felt love for my mother, or someone I had, a disagreement with, or I felt really safe and I felt cared for, I felt connected. And to me, that's so beautiful, because ultimately that's what I felt that in that moment after that asana physical practice that day many years ago. And then when I decided to start on this journey of teaching, my intention was, I want to offer people the space where they can feel that. So I'm very excited to have now discovered and now to be sharing sound healing with others. Yoga is my first love, and I have a soft spot for this practice that brought me into this realm, I want to say. And so I still very much love teaching beginners. Ultimately, we're all beginners. I love teaching meditation, and the sound healing feels like it can be part of it. So now I enjoy including that as part of practice. And sound healing is like a guided meditation in many ways. So introducing people to meditation, people who may not have thought it was for them, or that they could have access to that. So that feels really special.
Thank you so much for painting that picture and for sharing your experience with sound healing. personally, I've had such an amazing, profound experience with that practice. Um, I originally started practicing it here in Canada, but when I traveled to India and Nepal, that was when I really got to go and sit with some amazing practitioners. And it was crazy how you'd be laying there and it would be one or two people at most, but the sounds that they were making, it literally felt like you were in the middle of like a rainforest. They're making different animal sounds and they're playing different instruments and they're making nature sounds. And it was just so amazing to feel like I was just laying at home putting on a YouTube mix, but this was live and coming from these beautiful facilitators, literally channeling this energy through them. And I myself am offering sound healing, but I've never been able to reach that level of what they offered. But I have done a lot of research, and same with me, I've really been interested in the science that is now proving all of this ancient wisdom. One of my favorite quotes is from Nikola Tesla, who says, if you want to understand the universe, think of it in terms of frequency and vibration. And we can even go back to Om itself is said to be the sound vibration that created the universe. And in Christianity, they say the word of God was the first thing that existed, and it was a sound vibration that created the universe. And in science, they say it was the Big Bang, right? Another sound vibration that created all of existence. And so it's so beautiful to witness that this, again, is a topic that is supported by so many different perspectives. And in that way, I have found that it's something that's very accessible to many people of various paths and various belief structures. And so that also leads me to my next question for you is, I know that you personally highly value accessibility and creating safe spaces for people of different lineages and different walks of life. And so I'd love to hear more from you on how you as a teacher create a safe space for the students that come to practice with you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think this is a really important topic. And as you know, I live in Guatemala, so not everyone has the same budget. And one of the ways that I've aspired to make my offerings accessible is to always have donation-based offerings. So when I was teaching yoga, asana practice, so the postures in Panajachel, which is the other side of the lake of where I live now, my classes were always donation-based. And so I had mostly Guatemalan women, which made me very happy because many of them said to me, I always wanted to try yoga. But if a class is the equivalent of, say, $12 for someone who earns the minimum wage in Guatemala, it's a lot of money. So making it donation-based meant that if there was a foreign person, often they would leave, maybe $5 or more, and local people sometimes would leave, what they could. And I really believe that the universe, and from my personal experience, the universe supports us. So when you're doing something from the heart with good intention, things work out. And if they don't work out, it's because it wasn't quite aligned or quite right, but it will work out, and perhaps in a different form. And so similarly, my sound baths here at the moment, I offer one sound bath a week, and it's also donation-based, so people can give what they can. And I find that is a really good way to make it accessible to more people, because often finances are an obstacle for people. When it comes to our teacher training, we offer scholarships to the people who need it. So we've had a Guatemalan woman join us on a recent teacher training. And so we offer discounts to people from Central and South America. And we're always open to discuss finances, because we think we want it to be accessible to everyone. And we're aware, of course, if, for example, I don't speak Tzutujil, which is the language that is mostly spoken here where I live in San Juan and Lake Atitlan, then people who don't speak Spanish then aren't able, they don't have access to the yoga classes. So I would love to have someone, this is yet to happen, but someone who speaks both Spanish and Tzutujil join one of our trainings and make it accessible to those who don't speak Spanish. So planting that seed for that to blossom whenever the time arises, as we are yet to offer a teacher training in Spanish, but it's something that I'd love to do as well. And in terms of belief systems and religions, at the sound bath, I actually have a picture of a heart. And, on my altar, I have a picture of Ramana Maharshi and I have Shiva, and all these are symbols. I also have a goddess, a Mayan goddess, and these are all symbols of different lineages. But at the sound bath, I have a picture of a heart because I think that really unites us all. We all have a beating heart. And I know sometimes for people who have certain beliefs or resistance to certain lineages, then having it be something that is without specific religion makes it more open. So even in our trainings, we speak of Buddhism, but we also speak of Sufism, and we also speak of quantum physics, and we mention Jesus Christ and Buddha and Rumi. And so I think what matters, of course, is the essence of the message. Just as you were saying, Jesus actually preached love over anything else. So I aspire to do the same as best as I can. I am yet to learn a Mayan language fluently. So for now, I'm learning, but I'd love to be able to offer it to people who live here.
Amazing. Thank you. That's such a potent calling to undertake. And yeah, I know you've been living in Guatemala on Lake Atitlan for a few years now. And so how beautiful is it to create a way for your gifts and your offerings to support that local community, and particularly people who may not have access to those types of offerings. Um, so I would love to hear more as well on in terms of accessibility, something that I know that you have brought up throughout this conversation, and I just as because I know you from for a while now, and I know this about you, that you really try to create offerings that are not just financially accessible, but also physically accessible. So I'd love to hear more in regards to that, how you as a teacher create safe spaces for people no matter what body it is that they are in.
Yes, thank you for redirecting the question to give me the space to share about that as well. I think the financial aspect often comes as a thought because I know that is an obstacle for many. But of course, also the physical aspect. So the yoga school that we have with my dear friend Rachel, Breath Body Earth, is based really on inclusivity. And so Rachel recently had someone who was deaf as well in her practice. And she said, let's make it work. So she would stand in front of the person so she could lip read. And something that we really aspire to share in our yoga teacher trainings is that yoga is for everyone, that all bodies are yoga bodies. And so the practice really doesn't need to be any convoluted sequence, although it can be, of course. But really, yoga is being here now. And so it might be as simple as a conscious breath. And in that moment of breathing in consciously, we are in a state of yoga, of union. So the different postures and sequences can really be supportive of that. And they can also be, an obstacle, move us away from that reality that it's always here now. So we really aspire to share the teachings in a way that is accessible, and to encourage our students, so the yogis who want to teach yoga, to learn how to make the practice adaptable to anyone who shows up to their classes. So I've had people come to a class, someone showed up in a wheelchair, and at the beginning I thought, okay, I've never taught someone in a wheelchair, and this person got out of the wheelchair and let me know that she would be all right, that she could do whatever she need, that she knew how to adjust. And that was really humbling because I thought I needed to do something for them. And actually they let me know, I'll be just fine. I've lived in this body this whole time, my whole life. So teach and I'll adjust. And it was a beautiful practice. I ended up slowing down when I started teaching yoga. I imagine it may be similar for you, Danya, but I think my main issue was that I was always running, going too fast. So I've learned from people with what we might call less able bodies, which are simply differently abled bodies, to slow down. And I think that has been a great learning for me as a teacher, and as a student, of course, because we're always a student before being a teacher. And I've definitely slowed down in my own practice. So definitely try our best. We try our best to make the teachings accessible so that anyone who comes into a yoga class feels welcome. That's really important for us.
Yeah, thank you so much for that work that you're bringing forth and creating a space for everyone to feel welcome. I think that's so important in this day and age where there's just a lot of judgment. And I think a lot of people take that on more often than we like to admit. So coming back to this space of safety and again of love can be so potent for people to finally feel like they can unwind and that they can decompress and remove those layers, as you had noted before, to really witness those parts of themselves that maybe they keep a little bit deeper hidden within. And so I have one more question for you, if you're willing to keep journeying with me. I'd love to come back to this aspect of love. And this is something that has been a theme throughout this conversation. But I'd love to come at it with a different perspective in terms of we talked a little bit about Sangha and community and of connection. And so I'd really be interested to hear more from you on your perspective and your journey with love and how through embracing love, you have been able to find community and deeper connection. And in return, how has that inspired those around you?
Beautiful. Yes. I think for me, the perception of what community was or what it should look like has really evolved in a really freeing way. And I think, not so long ago, maybe when I first came to the lake, I still had a belief that community was or had to be people that you did many social activities with. And I remember wanting to be part of certain groups in certain places that had, they would do like a movie night or things like that. And I felt like, oh, I would like to be part of that. And I still think that is beautiful. But I have realized how my own journey has been about opening my heart to, for example, these people who don't speak the same language as I do, that their mother language is not the same. And between Spanish and these Mayan dialects, there's very little in common, actually nothing in common. So being able to connect on a soul level with someone who doesn't speak your language, I think really requires this complete heart openness, which I think can be cultivated, because without much awareness, I think I had some judgment of, oh, but we cannot connect or we may not understand each other. And through laughter, through a smile, through simple gaze, we can really connect quite deeply. And so actually just today, before this call, my boyfriend and I went to San Pablo, the neighboring town. There's a feria at the moment. And yesterday we went as well, and we bumped into a few people, people who sell fruit at the market that we go to regularly, people who live, in the area in San Pedro, mostly older people. And it's not like we have really deep conversations, but we connect and we make a conscious effort, or at least I know I do, to acknowledge each other. And I try to learn a few words to let them know that I want to connect. And so perhaps our conversations are not what I think of when I speak of the Sangha, where I think, these conversations that are enlightening and elevating and speak of different practices and how we can support each other in the spiritual path, but they are also the Sangha. So I think that has been part of my own journey of seeing how the Sangha is not only the people in my spiritual community, like the official, spiritual community, which for me is more online, actually. Which I'm very grateful for because it means we're connected everywhere we go. And I love during teacher trainings being surrounded by people that I feel so much love for. But actually the women in the kitchen, and I know you know them because you've also worked at Arco Isis, Irma and Aurelia, and they're all part of the Sangha. So that has been a really beautiful evolution, I would say, in my perception of how to connect on a deeper level. Sometimes when there isn't the opportunity to have profound conversations on life, but actually through a smile or through a hug, feeling that soul recognition with anyone that we cross paths with.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that it requires a immense amount of vulnerability, right? To be able to put ourselves out there, to trust that we will be received in love. And so thank you for moving forth in this world with that courageous compassion and that love that you emanate all the time, and that at least that I've witnessed from you throughout the time that we've known each other. So thank you so much, Melissa, for all that you are and all that you bring to this world, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and connect with me in this digital realm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing and for the love that you emanate. I see you. I've been looking at your logo this whole call. I love this serpent. And I feel like I'm looking at you because I recognize, of course, and what I see in you is what is in each one of us. But when we aspire to reflect this love, then of course it becomes more radiant. And I perceive it in you as well. And I'm so grateful to know you and so honored to be part of this podcast. So thank you so much for inviting me and for doing this and for everything that you do, because I see also, thanks to social media, all the offerings and the beautiful way in which you're raising your son as well. I hope it's okay to mention that the world very much needs everything that you're sharing. So thank you as well.
Thank you so much for your sweet words. And yeah, the potency of social media, how we can stay connected with people that we meet on the beach of Costa Rica 7 years ago. So thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you all so much for tuning in today. What an honor it was to have Melissa here sharing with all of you. If you would like to stay in touch with Melissa, you can find her offerings through her Instagram __yogi b.me. That's spelled __YOGIBEE.me. You can also find her on Facebook, and she is one of the co-facilitators of Breath, Body, Earth Yoga School. She is continuously offering various meditation programs along with 200-hour and 300-hour yoga teacher trainings. My name is Danya Buak. I am the lead facilitator and founder of Wild Song Yoga School. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for stepping into this space of learning and growing with these potent wisdom keepers. It is a deep honor and a deep blessing to be here curating and magically weaving all of this knowledge for you. So thank you so much. From my heart to each and every one of yours, namaste.